Hey, Run Tribe by community. Welcome to our 119th episode of Fireside Chats. I'm being joined by our co-owner, Om Gandhi. And today we have a really special guest for you. We'll be welcoming Karishma Bali to the show. She is the founder and CEO of Drip, which is an AI hydration tech company working to optimize physiological performance. Now that sounds like a lot, sounds very sciencey. To make it easier for you, it is a fit tech company that is empowering athletes to reach peak performances. It's as simple as that. And what we want to make sure you do is stick around to the end because we have a special announcement from Karishma that's going to help you, the listener and the audience, with your hydration and getting your hands on her product. She's also a marathoner, and that is kind of how Drip got started. We're going to talk to her about her story on how she got started in running, how she founded Drip, and where she sees Drip going into the future. So without any more filibustering by me, let's bring Karishma onto this show. Hey, Karishma, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So we know you're a Chicagoan. I guess that's the right way to use it. Om is originally from LA, and I'm originally from New York. And so we have a lot of opinions on pizza, clearly. So, but before we get into it, we have to have you answer our question that determines whether or not Om asks the first question or I ask the first question.
Okay.
And that question is pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Nay.
Yes!
All right, I'll see you guys later.
It doesn't make sense. I don't know. Pizza's supposed to be savory. It's not supposed to be sweet.
Yes!
Tomato sauce can be sweet. I don't buy it.
Yeah. Add the crushed pepper, then, spice
Yes!
it up.
I do like spicy, though. I do agree with that. Okay, I'll stay.
You being from Chicago, do you go deep dish or do you like more Neapolitan New York style?
Oh my gosh. The Karishma from like 5 years ago is going to hate me for saying this, but where I am in this present moment, New York style pizza, but Chicago deep dish holds a very special place in my heart. There is this one place that I've grown up going to since I was like 3 years old. Every Christmas time to date, like my family will go to this place downtown, and it just makes sense. It's cold. It's okay if you eat a slice because it's dark and you're just going to go to sleep immediately after, too.
I was going to say, yeah, I get it. It's cold and it's dark, so why not have a bowl of tomato soup while you're enjoying that deep dish pizza?
Oh, gosh. Spoken like a true New Yorker.
That's right. Anyway, so I've gone to the Drip website, which for those of you who are listening, it's dripco.us, and you have an about us on there, and there's a little story on you about how you got started with Drip. But I'd like to talk about how you got started in running. What was the catalyst to get you to say, those shoes over there, I should put those on my feet and go run?
Oh gosh, let's see if I can condense the story. Long story short, so I actually used to hate running, hated it completely. I grew up as a competitive athlete. So I played tennis and soccer, arguably sports that you need a lot of running, different formats, but a lot of endurance to play in. And I remember growing up, anywhere from middle school to high school, and everywhere in between. Am I still on? Sorry.
Yep, you're on.
Oh, okay. There were so many times where I was notorious for trying to trick my coaches, meaning showing up late to practice to avoid the conditioning, and they just make me stay late and do it after. But did not like running, hated doing the mile, would do anything to get out of it. And the thing that really changed for me was towards the end of when I was in college. So this was at a time where I wasn't competing in sports, the collegiate level, was working throughout college, and then had a pretty hefty STEM course load. And I just missed the feeling or the euphoric feeling and the discipline that physical fitness gave to me. And this is towards the tail end of my college career, wasn't the healthiest, wasn't sleeping very well. and just set a New Year's resolution saying that I wanted to go 0 to half marathon in 10 weeks. Why 10 weeks? That's all I had from the time I signed up to race date. So I was like, let's make this happen.
Why a half marathon? Like, was there no other event in there, or was it one of those things where like other people are doing it, I can do it too?
There were, but I feel like just the inner competitiveness, I was like, let's just go big or go home. And it did not make sense to do a full marathon. I knew I had limits physically, but a half marathon, I'm like, okay, this is like doable. If I find like a training plan, maybe convince someone else to do it too. Told a friend about it, and she was actually like the first friend I started running with. Um, basically like started like signed up for like that race, and then we ran like a few kind of races subsequently together. So that was like really like the catalyst. Basically did that race. It was in Chicago, and it was in Chicago, and I think like March in Chicago is always like a coin toss. It's either like 65, sunny, light wind, great to be outside, or it's 10 degrees and it's snowing outside, or it's both. So we got very lucky to experience the 10-degree snow on the ground, ice hitting you in the lakefront trail during the race. And then 2 hours later, it was sunny and 65. So it was like a very weird day, a very good inkling that global warming was definitely occurring as we experienced in Chicago.
You could come to LA and visit us. I can promise you, you'll never have any ice scenarios happening. That's for sure.
Yeah. On the list to do like the LA marathon at some point too.
So you mentioned the marathon as something that you thought might be out of reach. How do you go from running this half marathon to this idea that you want to do a marathon?
So it was just like the high immediately after, even though like the race conditions were very poor, it was awesome. Like I just miss like that feeling. And I think what people don't realize is running is such a community sport, even though you're doing it individually, even though you're training individually and so forth. But basically, like I loved the part of doing it with a friend. I loved the part of doing the actual race. There were thousands of people around us. Some people were wearing like shorts when it was like 10 degrees out, but it was just so much fun. Like people were high-fiving each other, and I was like, this is good. And then the race ended, and then the day after, I'm like, why do I feel so sad? I feel like that can't be it. Like can't just be one and done. So decided to run or sign up for like the Chicago Marathon that year. And then that basically started something that I don't think is going to stop anytime soon. Done multiple races, full marathons, multiple half marathons, multiple 5Ks. And actually, just a couple months ago, did a 208-mile relay out in the Smoky Mountains on a team. So I did not do the whole 208 miles. It was a team of 10 of us, and I think my total mileage was like 26 miles, but that was spread out over the course of a few legs. That was a whole other experience in and of itself.
That is super cool. And it's amazing how like something that started as like just backtracking here, it's something that started as I just did decide to do this in 10 weeks because that's the time I had, has snowballed into this like do a marathon, do a relay, do multiple marathons, and just like um has just become like this experience of like growth, and also just like finding community as well, like you mentioned some of the cool parts about like doing this, like being out there in the energy of these races and having all those people cheering you on and like doing it with a friend, and like and even like the low part, like the post race blues are so real, like you mentioned that, I'm like I feel that, so
Yeah.
uh, it's just an amazing community to be a part of. But you took another step beyond that into the entrepreneurial side, and I wanted to dive into talking about Drip and how that kind of started from. Uh, did that coincide with your marathon journey, or did that idea formulate beforehand, or was there kind of like a parallel thread between both?
Yeah, it was definitely after. So almost kind of like by accident too. So I was training for, I think it was like my 5th marathon, peak pandemic summer 2020. It was a virtual marathon. I was supposed to run New York City. All the races had gotten canceled due to COVID. So what New York did is they created like this option for you to run the virtual marathon, and you had your headphones in. They're saying you're going through this borough at this time, and like the pistols going off at the beginning. And they even had like kind of a training plan or training regimen that you can keep up with. So I was like, I'm still going to keep running. Why not? Let's continue. And I was on a training run that summer when I nearly passed out due to dehydration. And again, this is like race number 5 that I was training for. I am from the Midwest. And even though I'd left for a few years, I came back right before then. So it wasn't like I was putting my body through like any new climate that I had to like acclimate to. I was used to like how hot it gets, like especially like peak July, like in the Midwest. And like the mileage also wasn't like anything out of the blue. So I was very frustrated, and I was trying to think like, why is there still like a ton of white space in terms of figuring out what hydration is to a T. And then basically went down this like rabbit hole into like my own endurance communities I was a part of. Friends who I knew who also like worked out kind of competitively, friends who were like former collegiate athletes, and just like through a ton of conversations, a ton of research, Facebook groups, old school marketing surveys, figured out that this was like a larger gap than I thought it was too. And it wasn't just hydration. It was like hydration, strain, and recovery, but all 3 of those were interconnected, with hydration being kind of the backbone of it. So decided to basically start building in terms of hydration tech and hydration optimization from that.
So help me understand like hydration tech, right? Yeah. What does that mean? Because the untechnical way, right, is to look at the color of your urine. Hey, if it's really too yellow, drink water. If it's, too clear, you've drank too much. So what is it that Drip does that's more technology based that's not that?
Yeah, so what we do is we built a product that's backed by hydration science. And hydration science is a relatively like new niche. It's only emerged over like the last decade or so. And to your point, that's exactly what people are doing right now. They're looking at urine color, your mouth gets dry, you experience a headache or a migraine or fatigue. And those are all symptoms of alarms, fire alarms from your body saying, okay, you have to get up and do something, but this is too late. Like you shouldn't have let it get to that point. And that's exactly what happened even in my instances that I heard from friends and peers and colleagues as well. What we do is basically aggregate all of these aspects that contribute to hydration. So what we do is we give you a hydration index using our software. And this product is being rolled out in a few different phases. So the first phase includes like a certain amount. Second will include like the remaining amount and so forth. And what we do is we take all these factors into consideration to give you that score. And that score is comprised of multiple factors because your sweat is as unique as your fingerprints are, which is why the sort of advice of drink 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water, drink a gallon a day, not only is archaic, but it's inaccurate too. And something not a lot of people realize is there is actually no scientific data or evidence backing the drink 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water daily at all. And I'm not sure where that came from. No doctors have backed it. Like it is just something that was like an easy to remember hack. And I think just caught on for people. So what we're doing is taking all of the real medical literature, our own research, and then creating like this hydration index based off of individual user data points. And in this process, one of the biggest goals is like diminishing that myth. Like, no, your hydration is actually specific to you, number one. And number two, hydration isn't just water. It's also salt. It's electrolyte content too. So the biggest things that we're trying to bridge.
Man, it's so, and I'll let you say what you wanted to say after, Jason, but I have to make a quick comment about just like I like what you said about how like hydration isn't specific to you, because I had a conversation with somebody this morning about like how the mileage you're running and the things you're doing, you can't compare
Mhm.
yourself to everything on social media because that's not specific to you either. There may be some people built to do X number of miles and some people built to do more cross training. And so I just, yeah, it wouldn't make sense to me, even with like, like 8 glasses, like being like 8 cups of water, being like the blanket for everybody, and I do want to follow up on this after what Jason has to say, but like, this is an interesting time to have this conversation too, with like the Olympics going on and just
Mm,
thinking
yeah.
about like how hydration might vary, or like what kind of studies you're getting back from different athletes in different sports. That has to be very interesting for sure.
My comment was going to be super simple. Karishma has just ruined the office life for everybody out there because their boss is going to be like, you don't need to keep going to the restroom. Stop drinking 8 glasses of water while you're in the office.
Oh gosh. It might be more though, so who knows?
That's right. Yeah, true. Good point.
Oh
Oh
man.
gosh. No, but to that point, I think I'm pretty sure I drank like 6 glasses of water like after my 6 mile run this morning. It was just so humid, and within like a hour like time frame after that like run, I'm like I still feel dehydrated too. So I
And we,
think it's just all these factors contribute to it. Geography too, like Paris versus Chicago versus LA versus New York. You're looking at all these different altitudes. You're looking at all these different ambient temperatures, humidities, latitudes. And then, of course, type of sport, rigor of activity, how long you're actually on the field or practicing. All of these kind of come in as like different sort of levers as well.
Yeah, it's got to be interesting. I didn't even consider, like, we were talking about different type of sport, but also the intensity of the activity as well, like the geography you're in, what you're doing. Like, are you on the water? Are you on land? Maybe even like genetics too. Might play a huge part. Like, I am for sure a heavy sweater. I know other people who are better in colder climates, and I think that it's got to be interesting, like aggregating all that data and seeing like all these different people from different walks of life, different fitness levels, and seeing like all these like different types of like levels of hydration. I guess I should say.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm going to ask, what's like the most surprising piece of data that you've seen with the tech that you have versus what you thought might be the answer that you were going to get?
Yeah, so it's like interesting. And now is like an interesting time because I think we're still like actively like seeking feedback and just like learning from like the people who are using. But one of the biggest things that we found was an additional aspect that was kind of like on the roadmap, but actual like intake and specific incremental intake too. So during a practice, during a run, during a game, like we've heard from like multiple athletes who are like actively like using like our product right now or our beta, that they want to be able to kind of like report at what specific instances that they are drinking, which we thought was really interesting because we're, looking at fluid loss, pre post weight, things like that. But if you're having like different incremental like intake points too, that data becomes refined to a T. So that's kind of like something that's like in the works for the future, as an add-on. And even like personally, I'm thinking about like my own usage. If I'm on a run, and I'm probably not the best at this, even though I talk about hydration all the time, my threshold personally is 6 miles. I can go without carrying anything. Anything above 6 miles is when I need to start to have, I need electrolytes and I need water on me. But I think like even during that, 6 to like 13 miles, or when I get to the longer runs too, up to like 20, what I document, what I like stop to document. And what we're hearing from like athletes who are competing at that Olympic level, competing at the collegiate level, is they do want to document because then it becomes like seconds that you can shave off during like your times too.
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah, that's got to be an interesting factor as well. I mean, just like uh, you're saying like for 6 miles is your threshold, but again, it goes back to like intensity and humidity and all those other factors. So definitely, it's just amazing how much goes into the simple concept of like the simple yet complex concept of like hydration and drinking water.
Yeah.
I do want to zoom out from the science and get into the surface level of
Yeah.
what all three of us are, and that is entrepreneur and entrepreneurship. And I have to ask you, like, what are there any common threads between being a runner, like a teacher, and an entrepreneur? And like, are there lessons that you learn from endurance sports that are helping you be a better entrepreneur or helping you relate to your target audience more?
Yeah, oh gosh, 100%. And this is going to sound so cheesy, but building a business or building a company is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Had to plug
Can
that
we
in there.
100%.
can we just make it an ultra that never seems to have a finish line instead of just like a marathon at this point?
It is an ultra. Ultras when you get to that exit point or acquisition or partnership or I don't know, you do something else. But yeah, I've seen like so many parallels, and I think like one of the biggest things is really just like the resilience. And I think I like wrote something about this recently. Like building a company is like making your own job up every single day and trying to stay as focused as possible throughout that. It's like getting knocked down more times that you can count. And then it's also just like living with like a lot of uncertainty other than like the moonshot or like the vision that you might have that you start out with. And I think running is like super similar to that too. I think, you can have like a training plan, you can have like a plan of attack, or say, this is what my diet is going to be. But so many things get changed during like that 4 month time frame. An example is even like now during the summer, I'm like midway through a training plan for like an October race, had a ton of travel. During that travel, there were thunderstorms. So I'm like, okay, I can't make it outside, not a treadmill runner. So I'm like, what can I do to kind of get the miles in? You get sick, all this stuff happens, but you just kind of do the best that you can and adapt as quickly as possible. So I think a lot of that has like definitely been mirrored too. And I do think you also have like this upper hand of like being an athlete or having like that athlete mentality. Just because like you run like a bad few miles doesn't mean your entire race is going to be bad too. And I think that definitely translates into like building a company. Just because you had a couple bad days, you might have had a bad week or even a bad month. I think the most important thing is like how were you reacting to that to kind of like move the needle and keep pushing forward too.
Yeah, I just posted on LinkedIn yesterday about consistency being the key, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking about marketing and being an entrepreneur and getting your brand, your product, your service out there and being consistent in talking about it. And that's what we learn as runners is I may not be able to run, pick a number, 10-minute mile today, but if I keep showing up and I keep being consistent, then I'll see my times go
Yeah.
down. I just need to know that it's the long game, shall we say, right? That to your
Mm-hmm.
point, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so how do you then balance all of these things in needing to be consistent? I need to be consistent to show up for my training plan. I need to be consistent to show up for my business and my partners and my clientele. I need to be consistent in my, in teaching and then also having fun, right? There's friends and family that you want to go hang out with and have a meal with, as opposed to sitting in front of a laptop hacking away like the cat meme, right? So like, how do you balance all of these things and consistently be consistent at all of them?
And to add to that question, is there balance? Because sometimes we've had the answer be there is no balance. We just, so I'm curious to hear your answer.
Yeah, I think like what's really helped, and I think I've gotten so much better at this like now versus when initially starting, and then even just kind of like tracing like patterns throughout my life. I think like a lot of it is just like being okay living in certain seasons. So I think certain seasons, quote unquote, there is no balance, but more recently, I think there is. And what helps is parts of my life tend to be compartmentalized, like especially like adjuncting, for example. Like I only adjunct like for a few months, spring quarter, every year. So kind of have that as being a focus, as like one element. And then with running, though I am running like year round, typically summer. So like spring and summer tend to be like my like most peak like training plans too. And I actually just picked up like this year. I haven't done a race in like I want to say 3 years. And I did the first relay race like this spring, and then that kickstarted like, okay, I'm in race mode now. So I think like that helps versus like winter and fall months where I'm kind of taking a break or tapered off until kind of like the next season, still running here and there. And then I think in terms of just like with the startup is being very like deliberate about like staying focused and almost like working in sprints because there's so many things that need to be done. We have a very lean but very mighty team, and it's just making sure that like I'm doing like the three things that's going to move the needle. My entire team is doing their distinct three things to move the needle, and then we're all coming together to kind of stay as focused as possible. Um, and then the last part, just having a life at the same time. Um, I think I've gotten really better at this year, specifically in 2024. Spending a lot more time with friends who aren't founders or friends who aren't in tech. And that has been like one of the biggest, most like invigorating sources of just like energy. And I love my friends who are founders. I have such a tight knit founder friend community as well. But I think what tends to happen is one, it's not really like unwinding or unplugging, which can be good. You're working through problems together, but all everyone is doing is kind of like talking about work, and there's no barrier, there's no shut off. Or, you know, my fear, it's happened a few times, people think of new ideas to pursue. I'm like, nope, this is where I got to log off. I got to go home now. One is good.
I, I gotta tell you, man, I gotta tell you, like, Jason and I talk every day about the business, and ever so occasion, like every day, there's something like, "Hey, you want to hop on a FaceTime? I got a new idea for you," and I'm like, oh, "Let's hear it." And it's always, and granted, like this too. Like I think for every 100 ideas you throw against the wall, you'll have that one idea that like works out. Like you have so
Yeah.
many more small failures than you have like that lead up to that success. But like, man, it's just it's good to set those boundaries for sure. And I think Jason and I have both gotten better at it as well. Like he's really taught me the concept of like put down your phone for an hour, set a time block, and go touch grass and go sit on the park bench.
Yeah.
For sure.
One of the things that we ask each other, and I'm interested to know if you and your partners do this as well. So one of the things we ask when we have this idea is this just a really cool idea, or is this going to make us money? Because having like a boatload of cool ideas that make you no money is just going to burn you out in the long run.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So do you guys have sort of like a litmus test on whether or not an idea is going to move forward or not?
Yeah, we honestly just like leave it at a conversation and closing the book because I think like everyone is just so heads down building their own companies right now. We're like, this is like now not the season necessarily, but I think that could potentially change in a few years. Like it'll usually be just like fun conversations at the bar. Like we do meetups every now and then. So just like chatting, or if we're talking about something or some trend or someone's life experience, that comes up. But we try to keep it as like closed book or contained as possible for now, at least.
If I when I went to your website, there are 4 people on the about us on the team. Is it 4 of you, or do you have more people in the background that we don't know about?
Yeah, so predominantly 3 plus 1 advisor that's on the website, and then we have like a couple interns as well.
Okay.
That's yet to be updated on the website. We're just waiting for a few pictures from them. But
Come on,
we've
interns,
had
let's go.
we've had some really great interns like over the last year, working on all sorts of things, like anything from Strava engagement and building up that community to building out some of like the mobile app and kind of some of like the back end work as well. And then even just like newer like insights too. I think like Gen Z talent is so interesting because they're seeing things that we like don't necessarily see. And like when they'll talk about like different sort of strategies, we're like, this is actually really good. We should implement them. So super, super grateful to have some pretty awesome interns with us.
So our team is Gen X, which is me, and then we have Millennial X, which is Lori, and then Ohm, which would fall into the millennial space. And so it's really cool to have three different perspectives there. But I'm also an adjunct teacher like you, and so when I talk to my students who are Gen Z, it's awesome to get insight from them on what they're seeing, what they're doing, what they're looking for, to be able to apply that as well. And I think that's an advantage that you have that I'm going to guess a lot of your competitors in this space don't. Which brings me to another question: like, who do you view as competitors in your space? Is there a competitor to you in what you're doing?
Yeah, just because of this like new iteration, technically no. From previous iterations there were. We were kind of like dabbling in like the sort of like physical product landscape. There were like a couple players that I think started and then stopped. But in terms of like hydration monitoring or like hydration science, the real kind of equivalence to getting like this precise of like an index for an individual is really just going into a lab, getting like tests done repetitively. There's like mail-in tests as well, but when you're looking at athletes that are competing at this level, the odds of you doing that, going into a clinic every single day just to know what your sweat and what your sweat rate and what your hydration index should be, pretty slim. And then with the mail-in test as well, you're looking at like just the time, the turnaround time. You'll send one in on a Monday. You won't get your results probably until like the Wednesday following week. And then at that point, you'll have like maybe like 5 other data points that you've already inputted as well, too. So we like to say that we're kind of spearheading a lot of like the hydration science in terms of hydration tech like this.
So that then leads me to believe that the information that is being transmitted from the sensor to an app is instantaneous. Is that the case?
Yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to clarify. We're not focusing on the sensor anymore. We're exclusively just platform and software based
Okay.
too.
And so then
Yeah.
how does that work? How does my information get to the platform and software?
So you'll input some preliminary biometric information. So simple things like biological gender, age, ethnic background. Some of those things will you only put in like once. And then what we do is we automatically extract like ambient temperature, humidity, latitude, altitude, some of those elements that we shared before. And then one of the only manual things that you will enter is basically your pre and post weight. So your weight before like a run, before a workout, and then after a run or after a workout too. And we're taking that like net fluid loss into consideration as one of like the aspects overall too.
And then am I also inputting the duration of the run or swim or bike, whatever it might be? Like I've done it for 30 minutes or 3 hours. Does that information go in there as well?
You'll press start workout and then stop workout,
Oh,
just pushing a button. Yeah.
oh, wow. Okay. Very cool. And does your app tie into other apps? Because people are using Zwift for biking or Strava for running or Garmin for running. Like, is there an API connection between the two as of yet? Or is that something you're thinking about doing?
Yeah, that's like on the very like near term in terms of like roadmap. So Strava is definitely one of them that we'll be integrating with Apple Health, Garmin. We'll also eventually like integrate with like Whoop and Aura and things like that too. Typically, like athletes at this level tend to be users of all these platforms. So we're trying to like meet athletes where they are and take those data points too. And especially what's interesting is all these like aspects, distance metrics, you're looking at sleep data, you're looking at mileage, all these aspects contribute to a more refined hydration index. So we're kind of pulling all those in to kind of get those versus just creating another heart rate monitor or a sleep sensor, which the world doesn't necessarily need.
So how do you stand out in a crowd then? Because you just mentioned that, it's not something else another person needs. What makes your product, your service, something that a person does need?
So the hydration product, what I meant by that is we're not making another wearable. We're not like exclusively going down that route, and we're not a company that's ever going to track independently like heart rate and sleep, just because those platforms already exist. What
Gotcha.
doesn't exist is a hydration monitoring platform, and that's where we're stepping in too.
Very cool. Yeah. So the future seems very bright with where you have gone. Could you have imagined the pivot that you've made recently from when you were thinking about starting this business, a couple of years ago?
No, this actually just happened early on this year. It was like kind of like an out of the blue phone call with my co-founder, Ineko. He's our CTO as well. And we were just talking about hydration science. And I think we were kind of at a bit of like a roadblock. We were trying to figure out how to like move past it. And it wasn't really just like moving around it. It was just like hitting down the wall and then going through it. And we were just like, there's so many that we'd overlooked. This is so much larger than we initially thought about. And I think there's so much wider opportunity of building a platform, not just as a company, but like to provide actual value as well. And that's like the biggest thing. So being an athlete first, athlete focused company. But no, even if you asked me January 1st this year, is this where you guys would be? No, had no idea.
I love it. That's part of the entrepreneur life though, right? That's where like the idea thing comes into play and you're like, oh, wait, this might be a better use of our time, our energy, and our money versus continuing down this path that we thought might be the right way to go, but this is much better. When we introduced you, we teased to the audience that if they stuck around, they would get some information about your product. So before you announce that piece of it, tell the audience where they can find the product, your business, your company. Where can they go on the internet to find you guys?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go on our website, www.dripco.us. That's DRIPCO.us. You can join our beta from there. You can check out a podcast that we've had with some pretty cool people. And you can also check out some of the highlights that we've had as a company as well.
Awesome. So make sure you go to dripco.us. You mentioned join the beta. So what is that?
Yeah, so what's really cool about this is they're focused on kind of sports teams. We've opened up a community beta for athletes, and the product that you see that's like the beta on our website right now, this has been used by a few people kind of training, competing at the Olympic level. This has been used by current, former professional athletes, tons of collegiate athletes, and then tons of marathoners who are doing like sub 230, sub 250 races. So all these athletes competing at like the most elite level have used it, and we're kind of opening that up to the community to kind of check out and play around with as well.
And it's as simple as entering an email address and some information.
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. Look, guys, you can't get much easier than that, right? Email address, some information, and you'll be part of the beta test for Drip, which is going to be making splashes. See what I did there? In the hydration space.
Love it.
In the hydration space. And, it's a topic that comes up constantly. We're in the middle of summer right now. It'll be August 1st here before you know it. And hydration is super important. So make sure you get in on that beta test. Karishma, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some insight into your journey as a runner, as an entrepreneur, and where Drip is today and where it's going. But before we let you go for good, are you ready for our rapid fire food questions?
Oh gosh, yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so we call them rapid fire, but the reality is take your time thinking about them. These are like uber important food questions, and we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the answers. So you already answered the pineapple on pizza, which you got correct, by the way. And so let's stay hitting home runs here. Oreos. Do you like the old school Oreo, the double stuff Oreo, or these two things that they think they should be selling, the thin or the Cakester Oreo?
So I didn't even know that there were two new ones, and I probably haven't had an Oreo in like several years, but I'm going to go with the original Oreo because that's all I know.
Perfect. And that's all you should know. Like, we don't need all these other things. You go to a grocery store and you look at the Oreo aisle these days, and I will challenge you to do it. Go there and there's like 80 flavors. And it's like, the Oreo originally was perfect the way it was. We don't need all these other things.
Yeah, and you sorry, you said cake like Oreo? That just doesn't even sound like it would be
Yeah,
appealing in any way.
right. It's like devil dogs. Do you remember devil dogs?
No.
The devil dog was like a cake with cream filling and a cake. I mean, it's basically, but it looked like a hot, like a, of
Gelatin, probably just like an artery clog waiting to happen.
course.
Or diabetes waiting to happen.
Licorice. Do you like licorice?
No.
All right, good. So we could skip that one. Peeps. Are Peeps a real candy or is it just marshmallow covered in glitter dust?
So I don't like them, but I think they're cute to look at, and I feel like they're nice little decorations.
That's a perfect answer. They look cute in the package in the grocery store, which is where they should stay.
Yeah.
Candy corn. Is candy corn a real candy or is it just earwax covered in sugar?
Oh, also really do not like candy corn. I think I'm more of a chocolate person than a candy person, but yeah, earwax covered in the phrase that you said would, greatly define what those are.
We're hitting home runs today. Let's keep it going. Creamy or crunchy peanut butter or nut butter if you have allergies? Which do you prefer?
Oh, this is tough because I'm really into creamy almond butter, especially after a long run, but I like crunchy peanut butter.
Like creamy almond butter by the spoon, like you're just sticking it in there and eating it after a run, or are you actually putting it
No,
on bread?
I'll put it on toast. Yeah. But if it's a spoonful, crunchy peanut butter.
Oh, I like this. Little discernible actions going on here.
Yeah.
Red velvet cake. Is red velvet a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
Oh my God, I've never thought about it that way. I would say it was. I love red velvet cake. But now you're making me second guess all these opinions I have about it.
Hard hitting journalism right here on Run Try Bike's Fireside Chat.
Yeah.
You got to answer the
Put
question
that
though.
up as a post, it would go viral immediately.
You haven't answered the question. You got to answer the question.
Is it a real flavor? I'm gonna go with yes. I'll go with my initial thoughts, although now I am beginning to question them.
We asked this question of everybody, and I think 2 out of the last 3 interviews we've done, the person that has answered has said that it was the cake at their wedding. When I've just totally disparaged the hell out of red velvet.
Oh my
cake.
God, that's so funny.
I was like, look, it's not for me, but I'm glad you got married with it. Enjoy. Favorite candy bar?
So this can't be chocolate because I'm not a candy bar person. Like candy isn't like sour candy
No,
or
candy bar. It could be Twix, Snickers. What's your favorite candy bar?
oh, probably I'm gonna go old school, like almond Hershey's.
Nice. That's a good call. Like you really can't go wrong with that. You break off the little squares on there too. It's a good call.
Yeah, it's like portion control at the same time.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Hmm. Okay, so I don't know if this might be a Chicago brand. Jenny's ice cream, it might be a Chicago brand. But they have like this wild brambleberry crisp flavor that is basically just like berries like infused into vanilla ice cream with like a sweet, I think it's almost like some type of sweet waffle cone that's like embedded in the ice cream
Wow.
already. So I'm gonna say that, which is very specific.
I'm gonna have to go to Goldbelly and search if they have this for delivery so I can get it out of Chicago into my house. I saw you drinking Starbucks there. Are you a pumpkin spice or apple cider person?
Oh, and I wish I could show you the screen. So this is actually just hot water inside. You probably can't see it. And the reason being, I quit coffee on December 31st, 2023. So I haven't had any coffee since New Year's Eve last year. Lots of stuff was going on. My heart rate was abnormally high and was having all these like other symptoms just due to stress. And I'm like, what's the one thing that I can like eliminate? Coffee. And it did wonders. So I haven't had any coffee since then. I'll occasionally have like a green tea though, too. So I haven't cut
So
out caffeine, just coffee.
okay, so have you tried London Fogs?
No, not yet.
So I can't recommend it enough. It's Earl Grey
Okay.
tea in steamed milk, like a latte, but with Earl Grey tea
Okay.
instead of coffee. It's phenomenal. Like, and I love coffee, but there are some days at like 3 o'clock, I'm like, I don't want a coffee, but I want something hot. And London Fog is usually my go-to in that scenario. So
Hmm. You have
savory
to
or
check them
sweet?
out.
Yeah, definitely check it out. And they sell them at Starbucks too.
Oh,
Savory or
perfect.
sweet? If you had to only eat one type of food for the rest of your life, are you going, give me sweet every day, or are you going savory every day?
Savory.
Nice. Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin cookie?
Oh, chocolate chip. Oatmeal raisin should not be a cookie.
What? You were on such a roll. We should have ended this show at 45 minutes.
I don't know. It gives me like grandma's friends
Yes.
vibes.
What's wrong with grandma? We throwing grandma
No,
out the
not
window
grandma.
now?
Grandma's friend who's a little questionable. Not the grandma. The chocolate chip.
Grandma's questionable friend and oatmeal raisin cookies will never be the same. All right, last question for you. A tray of brownies is coming out of the oven. Are you going to the edge where you get a little bit of crust on there, or are you going to the center where it's all ooey and gooey?
100%.
Edge 100%, like
Yeah.
without even having to think.
Well, okay, but it can't be too crispy. It's like a little bit of the, not the full edge, but like a little bit of the edge.
Are you a person that wants to or enjoys having the like walnuts or pecans on their brownies, or no nuts at all?
Oh, 1000%. Yeah. Definitely walnuts or pecan. Walnuts preferably.
Are you an a la mode person? And if so, what's the flavor of ice cream you're putting on top?
Vanilla, 100%.
All right, well, normally I would give advice on how to incorporate coffee ice cream into your brownie intake. That's phenomenal, but you're no longer drinking coffee. But for the audience members who are listening, best way to have a brownie a la mode is get the brownie, put it into a coffee mug, top it with a scoop of coffee ice cream, and eat it. And it becomes like a mocha. And then as the ice cream melts, it becomes like an affogato. So it's like a chocolate
Ooh,
avocado. Yeah, it can't be beat. It's so good.
that sounds so good. Maybe in another life, because I don't think I'll drink coffee ever again.
Oh. Karishma, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who joined us late, this will be up on our Instagram page here in a few minutes, but on Friday, you'll be able to access it via the Run Try Bike YouTube channel and on our website, runtrymag.com. And Wednesday of next week, wherever you get your podcasts, you'll be able to listen to this while you're out there running or cycling. And be sure to join the beta program at Drip. So while you're listening to this, you can then input your information and get some actionable data back from Karishma's company, Drip. Karishma, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me too. I had so much fun.
You got it. See you guys next week.